Hi there, it's Katie Crysdale from Lakeview Aquatic Consultants. Welcome back, or welcome if you are new here. Coming to you a little bit late this week. This is the third version of me trying to record the audio of our weekly Pool Aid newsletter. Just having a couple of technical difficulties, so I appreciate your patience. I am going to get these up each and every time, but obviously a little bit late. So today we're going to be talking about the October 29th weekly newsletter. If you are new here, the reason I am recording an audio version of the newsletter is I've heard from a lot of you aquatic professionals that you just don't have space in your inbox for another newsletter. And because our newsletter is so heavy on the linkage outward to news articles, different facility features, different products, this is an opportunity for you to set this up in the background, listen to me talk about the newsletter, and then go and click on any specific stories that you are interested in reading more. So that is my goal each week, is to bring you a shorter, abbreviated, but no less informative version of the newsletter. The newsletter is going to be linked down in the description box below. And please do consider subscribing to the YouTube channel. It really does help us know kind of what people are looking for and to get these weekly updates in front of you as soon as they are published. Let's have a look at the newsletter from last week. So the newsletter is linked down in the description box below. You can also subscribe. The newsletter comes out each Wednesday, and then our goal is to get you the audio version within a few days. We will get there eventually. This particular newsletter of October, the main thing that I started talking about was my recent trip to the World Water Park Association trade show and conference. I've talked about this conference before. I find it extremely valuable as a Canadian to go to this show and be able to interact and engage with a lot of different brands that don't have a physical presence, or they don't have staff or representatives directly in Canada. This is a truly show. I did do a video last year, 2024, which I'll link to below. And then I did vlog the experience this year, 2025. So give it a couple weeks and we'll have that up on the YouTube channel. In the interim, I did feature a few sessions that I went to, and they were primarily geared towards this ongoing topic of safety and security. So looking at different crowd events or different kind of large gatherings at some recreation facilities and aquatic facilities. We did also talk about negligent liability claims. So although the conditions in Canada are not as dire when it comes to customers suing aquatic and recreation facilities, this is a trend that I'm watching out of the United States, where the organizations that attend these conferences, they're spending a lot more time thinking about how to prepare, prevent, anticipate, or avoid these types of incidents. And primarily, I'm speaking about situations where nobody intends for someone to get hurt, but there may sometimes be negligence claims on behalf of customers who use the facility, even if nothing substantial happened. So I spent the first part of the newsletter basically talking about some of these sessions that I attended, and I will get into more detail when I do the vlog about that particular conference. But if you have the opportunity to attend the World Water Park Association conference or trade show, it's one year. Next year, it will be in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's going to be the week before Canadian Thanksgiving. I believe it's October 6th to 9th, 2026. Not be there. I have a personal conflict scheduling wise, but it is a really wonderful conference. I do understand that some people have chosen not to travel to the United States under the current political climate. And while I do respect that, it's just not possible for me in my current role and in my work, as well as my family connections. My husband is American. Most of his family lives in America. So that's where I'm continuing to go to these conferences. I will be attending the IAPA Expo next week in Orlando, as well as the Stargard Camp event in February 2026. So that's kind of the plan. Further down in the newsletter, I did talk about the 2026 Certified Pool Operator Schedule. We have that released. It's available for registration on our website. There is a $15 Canadian price increase for 2026. This is in line with increases in supply costs from the Pool and Hot Tub Alliance. We are continuing to keep our classes small, so they are capped at 25 people per class, and we are still focusing on a premium and positive educational experience. We have a couple of different options. You can pick a 4-day Zoom where we split up the 16-hour class 4 hours per day times 4 days. We are expanding our CPO Fusion options in 2026. So that's the option whereby you complete modules in advance and then only attend one 8-hour day on Zoom. And then we do always have a couple of times per year that we're offering a 2-day times 8-hour Zoom certified pool operator course. It is a lot of sitting, and it's harder for retention and comprehension to download all that information in basically 8 hours one day, 4 to 5 hours the next day. But we do know that for some people, that is the easiest way to get the class onto their personal schedule. And so for scheduling, we do offer that a couple times a year. We also have a few classes remaining in 2025, and then we do have a big gap of about 6.5 weeks between the middle of December and the end of January. So do make sure if you need to get that training done, or if you do have a budget surplus this year, that you are getting registered as soon as possible or letting us know approval, or if you're waiting for particular information. As always, the bulk of the newsletter each week is a variety of articles that I've been seeing across social media accounts, trade publications, as well as Google News alerts pertaining to swimming pools, aquatic facilities, and drowning. Each week is a little bit different, and this week is a prime example where we have a huge variety of different topics that are adjacent to aquatics. Not every topic is going to be interesting or relevant to your particular role, but I've included all of these articles because they are part of the landscape that we're seeing in aquatics. Some of the topics that I covered in the October 29th newsletter include a discussion about new safety requirements for outdoor sleepover camps in Texas. This is in response to the terrible drowning fatalities after the Rio Grande River flooded at Camp Mystic this summer. I am a longtime camper, summer camper, camp counselor. I have a huge passion for camp. And so we'll, I think, be seeing this topic certainly develop more heading into summer 2026. And although it's not strictly an aquatics topic, there's a lot of trends in recreation and camp spheres that trickle down to aquatics and other facilities, in my opinion. So that's one of the reasons. Also, because the little girls and the camp counselors, they all drowned, I think this is an appropriate piece of context to be watching in our industry as well. One of the articles I thought that was important to share was an acquittal of a lifeguard in Estonia. Although this particular case was an acquittal, I did want to highlight that the judgment or the comments from the court indicated that the individual on duty did not receive enough on-the-job training. So I think it's really important to highlight that a minimum certification is not always sufficient in a lot of jurisdictions. There is still a requirement for site-specific training or on-the-job training specific to the aquatic facility or to the role. And sometimes we have organizations that we work with as management consultants who think simply having the lifeguard credential in their region is not enough. And that is the primary reason that I included this particular article in the newsletter. There were quite a few mechanical structural project articles in the newsletter on October 29th. I shared an ongoing saga in Iceland pertaining to a pool basin where the basin paint has failed several times. And this leads to a bigger conversation we often have with clients or in the certified pool operator class. There's usually a desire to rush and get a pool reopened as soon as possible when there's a mechanical issue or some sort of problem. And often we do need to be looking at the bigger picture, the value, where sometimes a slightly longer closure with a slightly more informed remediation plan or resources or better qualified service providers is going to prevent the same issue from cropping up again and again and again. Nobody wants to have to redo the same thing again and again and again. But unfortunately, we do see often that people rushing into these projects that should be better considered, but they're not because of unforeseen urgency. That's what leads to this ongoing redo again and again. Every 6 months or so, there is a big story in the media pertaining to a woman who is asked to leave a swimming pool or a basin because she is breastfeeding a small child. And I do want to reiterate, as I try to in most certified pool operator classes, that the breast milk or the spit up or anything like that associated with a baby and breastfeeding is not a significant hazard to the general public when we're talking about a basin, a pool, with the correct residual free available amount of chlorine that is required in that jurisdiction. If you think about the fact that pools are required to have that residual, it is for things like this. It is for things like urine or blood or other contaminants that end up in the pool. We know that's going to happen as pool operators. I'm not suggesting that a mother actively breastfeed in the water, but if that's her choice, that is her prerogative. In Canada, a woman's right to breastfeed is protected under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. In your country or in your jurisdiction, it may not be quite the same, but in general, I would discourage any aquatic staff from asking a breastfeeding mother to move, to cover up, to do something different. If the baby needs to eat or they're comfortable where they're comfortable, there is not an immediate risk either in terms of drowning or in terms of sanitation or water quality. We really need to be clear about our facts, and we need to make sure that our staff are sufficiently trained so that this doesn't cause a public relations issue. There were a number of structural projects that I shared this week. So Three Rivers Aquatic Center is going through some structural repairs. There's also looking further down in terms of the city of Fort St. John is looking about where they might put a new aquatic center. There is also further down some closures in Prince George, British Columbia, and Winnipeg, Manitoba. Most notably, Winnipeg has had a lot of pool closures recently. And so thinking about the fact that we need to really be looking at these communities at large in our life cycle planning. It can't just be this whack-a-mole of this, then this, then this, then this. And I can tell you already in next week's article or newsletter, rather, November 12th, we'll be sharing a whack-a-mole situation in Vancouver where at the Vancouver Aquatic Center in the last few days, another piece of concrete has fallen from the roof into the basin. And this is the second time in less than 15 or 18 months that this has happened at an older building at that particular site. And so when we start to see these closures city by city, province by province, it is sometimes because of this backlog of maintenance that hasn't been done. And that connects back to a story further up in the newsletter. Poor planning saddled Portland parks with maintenance backlog of up to $800 million, city auditor says. So although this is not aquatic specifically, I did share this article to showcase that there are communities who are not realizing that when we build these larger facilities, we also have to have the appropriate staffing level and operating and capital budget to maintain these types of facilities. So the longer we leave these projects unaddressed or we don't document upcoming issues that we need to address, the bigger the balloon payment is going to occur. And a lot of communities cannot necessarily straight up afford these costs. And so we're going to start to see that drumbeat that we've heard the last couple of years, continuing facility closures where there's just not the money to reinvest a couple $1 million per facility to keep this critical infrastructure running. Also in the newsletter, I shared some water safety articles pertaining to a mother who was charged with texting on her phone while her toddler drowned in the bathtub, some changes to water safety curriculum in Indiana, some water safety rescue equipment, so ring stations, and as well as some fun events such as Swim with Pop, as well as this initiative to invite veterans and active military into the pool for free during the month of November. The last article I want to highlight that I found really tragic, it is not strictly pool, it is more scuba, which is, water, but not necessarily. I shared a story out of Texas pertaining to a 12-year-old who died during a certification dive in an open water body like a lake in Texas. And it brought up this question of, adult supervision, instructor ratios when it comes to a high-risk activity. I am not a scuba instructor. I am certified in scuba, but I don't enjoy it. So I'm not really qualified to comment on this whatsoever. But I did think it's important to be aware of these conversations that are happening in aquatic adjacent industries or programs and practice, because maturity and age requirements, there's often times that we have to have minimum age requirements or minimum training requirements. And with scuba, it is my understanding there has never been an official minimum age. You could be 8 years old and your family could get you scuba lessons. And if you're mature enough, that may be appropriate. I'm not suggesting in this case the child is not mature enough, was not mature enough, but I think it's important that we be aware that there are times when we have program requirements for a reason. And this is a good opportunity for you to look at your aquatic facility programs, whether it's safety and supervision, whether it is ratios, guardianship, whether that is minimum age to participate in certain types of activities. That is something to be aware of in your sphere of influence. Last thing to mention is that at the very bottom of the newsletter each week, I try and share some of our recent YouTube content. I am continuing on with the National Lifeguard series. So I shared a video that I'm very passionate about improving the quality of missing person searches that I see as a National Lifeguard instructor in our original NL pool classes, as well as at recertifications and at staff in services. So I apologize if this was not the most involved explanation of this newsletter. As I said, this is the third time I'm recording it, so it's not as fresh as I'd hope to be. Come back in a few days. I will be recording the most recent newsletter we just released yesterday, November 5th. We'll be recording the audio version of that newsletter, and it will be up on the live tab of our YouTube channel as soon as possible. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sticking through these technical issues. We will get there eventually with consistent posting. Thank you, and we'll catch you in the next video.